Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, where our goal is to keep you informed, inspired, and a little entertained on all things diabetes. The information contained in this program is based on the experience and opinions of the Integrated Diabetes Services clinical team. Please discuss any changes to your treatment plan with your personal healthcare provider before implementing.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. My name is Anna Sabino, and I am joined today by James Vander Mullen. Did I say that right, James?
Yeah, pretty much.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Today we're going to talk about diabetes burnout. But before we get started, if you're not familiar with Integrated Diabetes Services, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're interested in any of the clinical services that we offer, we're a pretty multidisciplinary team. Go visit us at www.integrateddiabetes.com. And so I'm going to introduce myself briefly here before we jump into this sort of always elephant in the room topic of mental health and T1D. My name is Anna Sabino. I'm one of the mental health clinicians on the Integrated Diabetes Services team. I've lived with type 1 diabetes since I was 6 years old. So well over 30 years at this point. You can guess my age if you want to. But I wear some technology and really love working with clients, patients who just feel like whether they are stuck or are in need of support, helping navigate the sort of emotional roller coasters, ups and downs of daily life with T1D. Whether you call it therapy or not, I'm a true believer that everyone needs some type of neutral source to either vent or share or, talk about questions related to diabetes, whether it is like pure on depression, anxiety, or whatnot, or just the day to day. I love listening to people's stories and helping them figure out the best solutions forward. So, enough about me, James. A little bit about you, and then I'm just going to kind of like piggyback, ask you a bunch of questions on diabetes burnout. And like, I think we've all been there at some point, right? And hopefully have our listeners leave with a few maybe tips and tricks in their back pocket.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's cool, obviously, to meet guys from around the world as well. You realize I think to start, before I introduce myself, I think it's important for everybody to realize that type 1 diabetes is theoretically and scientifically one of the most understood diseases in the world. And obviously, there is so much support, so much help, and there is a lot of work around it. So I think you can live a very long and happy life with it. Obviously it's not easy work, but I think the longer you deal with it and you come to terms with it, you slowly but surely develop methods to deal with it in your own way. I think it's a personal journey. There's not a one shoe fits all or one size fits all method, but ultimately, I think talking about it is a good thing. Learning from other people, learning ways in which people deal with it, I think it's a very helpful way to journey through life with it. But yeah, so I'm James Vander Mullen. I live in KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. I've had type 1 diabetes since I was 4, so I'm turning 27 now. So I had it for about 23 odd years. I started off injecting. We kind of like, obviously, when you first diagnose, you start off with learning how your body handles and reacts to insulin. You learn the differences between short and long term or short and long acting insulin. So I think slowly but surely you kind of work into all the different nuances of your body, how you react, your activities that you get up to, and how you handle it. But I now also obviously utilize quite a lot of technology. I'm blessed to be in that position where I can, and obviously I enjoy learning about new things that are coming out all the time, and it's cool to keep abreast of it. And it's nice to see that people are actively taking time to invest into the research and how you can actually get to a point where you live an ordinary life, a normal life. It's just about recognizing the fact that it's not going away, unless you're able to get some type of transplant. But I don't think a lot of people opt for that because in the long run, you're having to take anti-rejection meds. And I think obviously the side effect from that is also very different. The last time I looked, it was about 40% acceptance rate full on. Otherwise,
Yeah.
you deal with complications long term. So I think, yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it sounds like you've been at this for a while. And one of the things I wanted to jump back in that you said pretty early on in your story is that we really understand type 1 diabetes from the ins and outs, like biologically, but mentally is really where the crux of optimal diabetes management and the ability to kind of live decades with T1D is
Mm.
not necessarily as understood. It is a very self-managed, individualized disease that there is no one size fits all. I often say, to patients or to clients, you're doing the job of two organs, your brain and your pancreas. Like, this is an impossible mission. Insulin is one of the only medications prescribed in the world, as far as I know, where there's no dose on it. Like, you go to a pharmacy and you pick it up and it's like, well, here's your vial of insulin, good luck. There's no, take this twice daily, 3 different things. And so my question to you is, how do you not get burnt out? How does this day after day of managing diabetes, it is a lot of work. Even this morning, I just dosed for something and now my blood sugar is like, it's 193, which is a little bit higher than when I would want it to be. And so, how day after day can be so self-defeating. How do you prevent yourself from getting to the point where you are burnt out?
Well, it's a simple answer. You do get burnt out. You can't exactly,
Okay, so let's
I
dig
don't,
into that then. Let's dig into that then. How
yeah,
did you know
yeah.
you were experiencing burnout, and at what point in your life were you there?
So for me, obviously, when you're younger, your parents are helping you manage it. So obviously, I was
Mhm.
diagnosed when I was very young, and at that moment, I didn't understand it. I mean, they told me stories. They recall me hiding under the nurse's bed. I didn't want to be pricked. I didn't want to be dosed. This was just after
I
I'd
did
been
the
diagnosed,
exact same
and
thing in the
yeah,
hospital. I was
yeah.
6 years old. I hid under the crib in hospital. They tried to find me. You don't want that. Nobody wants that attention.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think so. Obviously, over time, you monkey see, monkey do, right? So, like for me as a young child, I didn't necessarily think of it as anything. I didn't have a construct in my brain that, oh, this is lifelong and this is a day to day, it doesn't go away. And if anything, with life stresses, with everything that comes with it as you grow up, you have to contribute to society, you have to study, you get a job, you own a business, you run a business. And for me, I have had periods in which I've been burnt out, but they've actually been later in my life. So
Mm,
obviously, I think for me, so just for context, I'm a lawyer now. Um, I did my undergrad at university and then I did my master's, and I felt the most amount of burnout when I started my first year of my master's. That was in 2021. And for me, the way in which it presented itself for me personally was I just didn't take care of the basics. So basics being, I'm not sure what insulin or glucose control monitoring you use, but like for me, just the daily need to, how many carbs did this meal actually take up? Like I need to now put that into my bolus wizard, and then let it work out how much insulin is connected to that and how much to go in. And my burnout presented and I just stopped doing the basics right. And you can't really put your finger on it, but because it's every single day, all the time, it's relentless and it becomes part and parcel of your journey. Sometimes when other life stresses are higher or in your brain, you see them as more important. That's when it happens.
yeah.
It happens because you feel like it's a nuisance. You feel like it's a constant tapping on the back of your head. It's in your
Mm,
subconscious. And quite frankly, you feel it physically too. I mean, if your blood sugar's high. For me, I can tell you right now, I feel about 7. So in South Africa, we use the metric
millimoles.
systems, the slightly, yeah, millimoles. So for me, I know that I'm 7.2 now. And if I look here, I am. Yeah. I can literally almost predict
Yep.
how I'm feeling because I think over time you get so used to how your body reacts, right? But to handle it, it's to recognize the fact that I'm just not doing the basics right. And then you have to look at why you aren't doing that. is there something in particular? I remember for me in 2021, it was just that I was lecturing on the side while doing my master's as well. And for me, I just had so many other things contributing to my life and to my stresses, to anxiety, that I just stopped doing the basics. And that's what my burnout kind of felt like. And I mean, it comes in waves, but for me, the best way to deal with it is very important for me personally is having a good specialist. Like, so for me, Paula Diab, her and I have a great relationship. I just say, listen, I've just stopped doing the basics correctly, and I know it. And you have to work out a way of being honest with yourself, because quite frankly, you know when you are. You know that, okay, I haven't done, or I haven't bolused, or I didn't carb count correctly today, and that's probably contributing to why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling. Number one, the first step is trying to find yourself a physician or a specialist that understands you, or that at least you can be open and honest with, and you can troubleshoot with, or find a way that in your daily routine, what small incremental changes can we make that are sustainable in your day-to-day life? Because I don't think it's possible to be on the money every single day. It's not possible.
No, it's not.
You having had it for over 30 years now, I've had it for over 23 years now. I know it's not possible. You'll have beautiful days where you literally don't go above 7, and I hover between 5 and 7 for weeks on end sometimes. But then you'll have 2 days that completely derail your whole process. And that's where you lose it. It's when you almost become too comfortable with slacking, with
Mhm.
not slacking, but
Yeah.
with just losing touch of how you started. And that's why I think I was lucky. I think nowadays when people are diagnosed, they don't necessarily prescribe that, no, you must inject insulin, you must do this, you must do that first. I was lucky in that I could learn the basics very early on in my life. So like I understand what a sandwich would be if I'm carb counting. I would be able to tell you it on the money, right? But for other people nowadays, with the technology increases, you are kind of
Flying by
ushered
the
into
seat
a
of the
very
pants.
yeah, yeah, and you're relying on the technology to do the job, right? And that's what it's there for, and it's great. But I think the burnout aspect I would actually imagine is higher for people that don't start with the most rudimentary treatment of diabetes. And quite frankly, I think that's one of the main reasons why a lot of athletes prefer that way, because it's actually, there's less to focus on. You don't have to worry about all the intricacies. Oh, what's my insulin correction factor? Should I change it in this time zone? Should I change it here? Whereas for them, they know, okay, cool. Today I'm going to inject long acting insulin and I'm going to eat accordingly. I've injected 44 units today and I'm going to eat to that measure. I mean, Alexander Zverev,
Yeah.
top 10 in the world tennis player. That's why he does it. He's
I'm
spoken
gonna, I
about it
love, I
at
love
length.
everything that you said because I could not agree more. And maybe because I come from similar to you, where, it's almost like not necessarily ignorance is bliss. And I'm a firm believer that it's not about, if you feel like you're kind of just burnt out. I mean, we as humans get burnt out, as a social worker, as a diabetes educator, as a person, I get burnt out. And I know I get burnt out. And I think my family now, I have 2 young kids. Sometimes I feel like I can tell. Like, look back at my graph. I wear the T Slim Tandem X2 system, and I'm just like, ooh, that time and range wasn't really great today. What can I do tomorrow? Do I have more water in the morning? How can I shift some of my behaviors? Because it is a very isolating and behaviorally managed illness. But something that you said really, really struck me that I don't think a lot of people process is that it doesn't have to be like all or nothing when it comes to technology. And does technology really contribute further into this notion of diabetes burnout, or are we just talking about it more often because there's more to talk about and there's more platforms and this, that, and the other thing? I think we've always sort of had this notion of this is so hard, but I work really closely with kids and parents and young adults who are processing the emotions of this diagnosis and grieving and trying to figure out every ratio, correction factor, all these things. How do they go to school? How do we travel? Like adapt diabetes into our like regularly scheduled programming life.
Mm.
And when I was growing up, and I know things are different and I don't want to compare, but I didn't think about diabetes like during the school day. It was like I took a shot, like you said, I pricked my finger and then on the very way. And it's almost like the technology is good, but like sometimes I think it comes down to, and it's like, I know this isn't necessarily super related to burnout, but it kind of is because it's like, if we don't trust our systems, our technology systems to do the work that it's supposed to do, why are we using them? The role, if we can understand the role of us and the role of the technology, we're going to have a better relationship with it. We're going to be able to understand it. We're going to be able to make changes. And I think that's part of the problem is that there's just not enough education out there and validity for all of these fine-tuning behaviors that we have to do as humans that we haven't adjusted to as like a society where the expectations are not sort of there. And so I do think, everyone's feeling of burnout is going to feel different. Everyone's version of okay is going to be different. And your version of okay today may be completely different than tomorrow based on, like you said, 1,000 other factors. But it is so hard to pinpoint burnout. And I know that you have the ability to recognize, oh wow, I am not even able to do the basics. Were there any other sort of like red flags that I know from a diabetes burnout mental health perspective, it's really like you're not taking your insulin. You're not doing as well as you have in the past. And that is, I think, a crux to burnout is that everyone's version of burnout is going to be different. Because if you're used to being on your A game and your A game is counting out every single goldfish you put in your mouth and now you're sort of slacking, well, maybe that's burnout to you. But for someone who maybe has their time in range at only 30 or 40%, and now you're down to like 10%, well, your version of burnout is much different. So I think that's something to keep in mind because I think so much of our world can be very comparative and like, oh, well, I'm not here and you're there and my A1C is this and yours is that. And I think it's really important as we're thinking about burnout is that your diabetes burnout will vary just like your diabetes will vary. We all take different amounts of insulin. But sort of circling back, I know that was sort of a tangent. What else do you feel like you notice kind of creeping in as you go over these emotional humps and roller coasters when it comes to burnout? And can you prevent yourself from getting there at all? Or is it just like, well, here I am, I'm going to call my diabetes specialist?
Yeah, I think so first of all, I agree with the tangents you went on for sure. I think it's that is a contributing factor and it will look different for everybody. I think everybody has to acknowledge that.
A word from our sponsor. Byram Healthcare understands that managing diabetes isn't one size fits all. With a full range of CGMs, insulin pumps, and diabetes supplies from top brands, Byram makes it easy to get what you need, hassle-free, shipped right to your door. And Byram's team of experts helps navigate insurance so you can focus on living your best life. Ready for better diabetes care? Visit byramhealthcare.com/podcast or call 866-692-8024 and select option 3. And now, back to our program.
All right. So as we dig into more about burnout, I think something to think about too is that everyone is going to be on their own journey all the time when it comes to type 1 diabetes. And I give a lot of talks, and I gave one last weekend to a group of parents called Parenting for Independence. And one of the slides that I always emphasize is that your schedule of acceptance does not always equal others, whether it is you as an individual living with diabetes and a parent, or a parent and their own parents. Whenever we have relationships with other people, our schedule of acceptance as it relates to sort of the grieving process or just processing what this diagnosis means can be very, very different. And therefore, burnout can be very, very different. And everyone may experience burnout at different points of their diagnosis, whether you're like emotionally burnt out, whether you're physically burnt out. And I think it's so, so important to be able to accept that this burnout is here and putting this, little label on it. Because if you don't, burnout is sort of the gatekeeper or gateway towards, things like depression or severe anxiety, avoidance of things like insulin administration, which we know is critical for managing diabetes. And if we don't recognize burnout as that sort of first step, is where it starts to go south, and without all of that lack of support. So, James, tell me how you feel like as a child, you and as a young adult now are able to kind of not necessarily combat burnout, but recognize it and then use that to cope, if that makes sense.
Well, I think as a young child, obviously, I was diagnosed fairly young in my life. I don't recall a period of my life where I wasn't diabetic. So
Yeah.
there's not like I have a comparison. So for me, I think in a way that's been advantageous throughout my life, dealing with diabetes, dealing with a chronic illness. But as a young child, you don't I genuinely don't believe you recognize burnout. And unfortunately, it means that your caregivers, your guardians, your parents, they almost need to look at you, see if you're understanding the gravity of being a type 1 diabetic, needing a specific hormone to get energy. So there, unfortunately, a lot of the burden rests on the relationship between you and your family. In doing so, it's also on the adults in the room to kind of impress upon you how important it is that you need to manage it and you need to learn to manage it. And as a child, I think it does often start at home, and it does often start with having a really good pediatrician from a young age, because if you don't recognize the importance of growing into your diabetes, for lack of a better phrase, you won't recognize it. And unfortunately, your parents only know how you're feeling if you tell them. And most of the time, they won't be able to tell that you're running hard because you haven't been learning to inject yourself or doing it yourself. So I think at a young age, I think burnout and fixing it rests on that relationship between you and whoever is helping you grow into it. But as you get older, that's then when it becomes that person's responsibility. Now this is where it's different. Now it's learning to develop a relationship with yourself, being able to say, today I feel horrible mentally, not physically from being running high or running low, but I feel horrible emotionally about having to deal with the day to day. Now, to deal with that, I think you have to then look back at what you've learned about what happens if you don't actually take care of yourself. Now, it's easier said than done, but again, it's about trying to develop a method of recognizing you can't get away from it, but there is slight leeway. I'm not somebody that believes that to be a well functioning human being, a healthy diabetic, that you have to be spot on every day. You have to learn to give yourself a bit of grace. So if you are having a bad day, you say, okay, what are the basics? The basics are I need to inject myself, or I need to do a bolus visit on my insulin pump, whatever you're using to administer insulin.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to step back and say the basics are I need insulin to break down food for energy. Now, that is the key. If you look at the basics, I do think that the bigger picture and something that you're
particularly stressed about because you know it's probably not going anywhere, it makes it far easier to recenter yourself. And that might take a day, it might take a week. But going back to basics, I remember my specialist, she said to me, in her mind, the most practical way of growing through your diabetes, living through your diabetes, and actually thriving with it is just trying your very best to do the basics. And when you look at diabetes from a high level point of view, that is just administering insulin and recognizing what you're eating. It's a invisible enemy.
Mhm.
So it's not like you are going to be able to predict your day every day. But what you can do is you can predict, I know I need 44 units of insulin. So I'm using our metric from here. But I will need to administer 44 units, or I'll need to have a basal rate at minimum of 44 units to
Yeah.
maintain some form of stability. Going past that, I know that, okay, at lunch, I'll eat a sandwich, I'll have a coffee. Probably I don't personally put sugar in my coffee, but I'll put, let's say I have a teaspoon of sugar. I'll literally look at it from the very, very bare minimum. I'm not concerned about doing an extended bolus on my insulin pump. I'm not concerned about running high. I'm concerned about making sure that what I put into my body, I'm bolusing for. That's the bare minimum that's
I
required.
love that. I love that perspective because I think so much of the time we now have, and it sounds like you do too, we now have the ability to fine tune our management down to like the 0.005, increments, whether it's a basal rate, whatever the strategy is that you're using, whether it is the, DIY looping system or, a basal rate or a temporary basal rate or automated insulin delivery, you want to change a target, we have the option to manipulate this type of insulin, but sometimes that can be overwhelming. I want to back up for a second because I completely agree with you about this sort of transfer of ownership around burnout. At what point did you feel like you sort of, whether it was like this aha moment, or because this is one of the things I'm most passionate about in terms of the parent-child dyad and the relationship between parent-child in terms of setting boundaries and burnout prevention and really just relationship management. So when, you are in your mid 20s, you can look back and have that foundation built as strong as possible as grow older, and we can say, why I'm a resilient kid because of the support I had from my parents. Two follow-up questions to that. Have your parents ever said to you that they were burnt out? And what advice would you give parents today about trying to not burn out as parents, whether they're newly diagnosed or, they're 10 years in and they're working with a child who, may not want to give their insulin or is just doesn't want to even admit that they have diabetes, which are two very, common, behaviors or feelings to have, which are, very normal.
Yeah, no, so I think on the first question, the transfer of ownership, for me, I think it was an innate thing.
Mhm.
I think I was lucky in that aspect, but it's also my parents have been together forever. So for me, it's not like I had to also deal with two separate parents, two separate households, two separate ways of doing things. And they did a brilliant job in my mind in establishing how important it is that you need to learn how to put your port in. These are things
Yeah.
that when you move out of the house, and I do believe I'm an ambitious person, then that's what I did. For me, I knew I'm not going to be able to do anything on my own unless I start doing it on my own. And I think for me, it probably happened around about the age of 10 to
Mm.
11. I was putting in my ports myself. But let's say that's not the case. Let's say the child is just for whatever reason a in inverted commas, a slow launcher. They don't just
Love
fly.
that. Love that. A slow launcher.
They're a slow launcher, and they slowly but surely are getting into it. It's about, if let's say the parent is putting in the port and helping them understand how much insulin they need to do, or how to carb count, or how to learn to carb count. I do think there, when doing it, you need to make sure in that moment. So if you are putting in their insulin port, or you're putting in their GCM, or their glucose monitoring port, there you need to basically take their hand, their physical hand, and put it there and show them, look, it's this easy. I don't know, you also use
Yeah.
the same pump
Yeah.
as me. We use the Tandem T-Slim X2, but this is how you do it. The best way of learning is by seeing it being done and showing the child that it's not a taboo thing. It's not something that's there to hurt you. It's something that you need. You need to
Yeah.
live with it, and you need to learn to do it. It's physically showing them to do it, as if your dad would put you in a car when you're slightly younger to learn to drive.
Yeah.
It's the
Oh,
same.
absolutely.
Like
The
just seeing other
modeling,
people.
the modeling is key. And if we don't have modeling, then it's very hard to learn.
Yeah. And I think it's sometimes hard love could work, but again, there I'm talking to the relationship again. You know what your child is like and how they take instruction or how they
Absolutely.
learn things. And there you have to have soft skills. You have to have emotional intelligence and look at how the child typically learns things. And you would probably learn about that from when the child's an infant, like how the child
Oh,
learns how to walk and or first crawl, then walk. You'll see how they pick up on things in life. And I think it's the
yeah.
same way as they grow up. If they aren't somebody that just takes it by the horns and wants to do it themselves, like for me, I hate having to ask for help
Yeah.
in the most
I'm the same way.
physical way possible. So I knew I wanted to learn and I needed to do it. So I just started doing it. If I had a problem, I would say, listen, mom, what this time it hurt me. Why do you think? And she would say, well, I think you probably pressed too hard. Or how are you? Like I personally put it on my buttocks. So like on my bum cheeks, my
Yeah.
port. So she said, well, whereabouts did you put it? And like I asked questions. The kid might not. And you'll start to see slowly but surely how they're learning it. And then in terms of the second question on potentially parents feeling,
Yeah.
I believe you said parents feeling burnt out or
Yeah.
stressed, or quite frankly, that's a normal feeling. I know my mother,
Yeah.
she cried for days on end, and she was very concerned about, she couldn't believe that her son has to deal with this now. But I do think people have to recognize how well managed type 1 diabetes has actually become over time, and how much support has developed on it, how much information there is available online. There's support groups if people need it. It's about,
Yeah.
again, it's a very common recommendation to seek help, but I genuinely mean you don't have to seek help with somebody physically, but you can seek help on your own. You can genuinely learn and look at how people are dealing with it, or how parents are. And quite frankly, all parents will go through the same mix of emotions.
Yeah. Totally.
You'll feel like it's somehow your fault, or you'll feel like it's somehow God against you, or you'll feel
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you'll just
Why
feel
me?
devastated for your kid.
Why
Why
me?
you'll
Question
start.
everything. Yeah. Yeah.
That is a process that people have to acknowledge that is a thing. It's like losing a loved one, or it's like losing a significant other. It's
It's
unfortunately,
supposed to feel hard. It's supposed to feel hard
yeah,
because it's new. And every time our body experiences something new, we want to oftentimes just like suppress it, and we can't.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah, so
and
I would
it's
say lean into the feelings. I would say lean into the
yeah,
feelings,
love
acknowledge it.
that. Love
But
that.
in doing so, there are also remedies. I'm not a huge proponent of wallowing in that feeling. I am a big proponent of recognizing it,
Yeah.
recognizing how you typically deal with stress, anxiety, and worries in general, and trying to apply those concepts in your own personal life that you
Yeah.
have done as a parent in general, having a child, to the current situation.
Absolutely.
Also, I do think, I just want to raise this point. I think a lot of parents, when they first hear that their child's has been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, or is type 1, the immediate reaction is a spiral, and you
Mhm.
don't feel like you're ready. And that's fine. Nobody's ready. That's why you have specialists also walk you through the process. They've trained their entire lives to do so. You have yourself, Anna. You've somebody that
Yeah.
lives with it, but also walks people through that process. And just recognizing that you're not going to get it right all the time, and that's fine, because it's new for everybody when they first get it. but also recognizing that people with type 1 diabetes can live a long and healthy life. It's just about doing the basics as much as possible and as consistently as possible. And if you can somehow bring a seance of calm, like
And humor, and a little bit of humor.
a bit of humor, and like, because personally for me, my parents didn't show me that they were concerned about it. I didn't see it firsthand, so perhaps that could be a good metric. Maybe try not to freak out in front of your child, because I think that will generally pass on to them. But if you can somehow try and worry either with the specialist separately or in your own time, it's probably best suited. I don't think freaking out in front of the child is the best way of doing it, but it might happen. But again,
It never is. I
Yeah.
think there are some sort of teachable moments that can come with the spontaneity of, emotions that come from diabetes, whether it's, tears or fears or whatnot. But I love what you said about asking questions. My mantra is always just like ask over assume, and I wish more people asked me questions about diabetes just in the day-to-day life as an adult. But I think parents sometimes can just feel so overwhelmed because they're not yet confident in the information. And we as a society now have so much on demand that we expect the answer. We ask Alexa, what's the weather going to be for today? And she tells us. We wake up in the morning, everything is on demand, and we want to solve it. That is just not how diabetes works. And I think it takes a lifetime of resiliency and experience to build up this ability to not necessarily feel confident, but it's really this ability to trust ourselves and create this ability to not constantly self-doubt our decision making. And that takes years, as you know. Before we sort of like wrap up, I did want to talk about, again, this whole idea of back to basics, because I'm a huge proponent of technology. It's great. My phone is next to me. I wear a watch. I have a pump. I've got my CGM. You do too. We're wearing the same systems. It's amazing. And it can also be a challenge for parents and anyone living with type 1 to kind of take it in the other direction to the point where it is causing burnout and it is causing issues with the parent-child relationship, and that can create tension and separation of that reliability in the parent-child relationship from an early age, which now we know some 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds are receiving phones regardless of diabetes. But with diabetes, it sort of forces a jump start in technology introduction that will have been delayed several years. So my question here to you is like, what advice do you have for anyone as it relates to the relationship with technology to try to prevent the mental burnout in the future?
Yeah, no, so I think you're totally correct. All of the nuance with technology, as much as it might make people initially feel very confident, they're like, this is amazing, because it does change your daily routine. Because if you have been using rudimentary management, you would either inject for the full day or you would inject intermittently depending on what you're eating. Now, with an insulin pump and blood glucose monitoring, you have a lot of information coming through at all times. Like, for example, our blood sugar is read every 5 minutes. And then that is Bluetooth to your pump and to your phone at any given moment. And it is autonomously adjusting your basal rate. Now, again, the concept that we spoke about earlier, in my mind, to manage your mental when you take up technology so soon or rapidly because of type 1 diabetes, again, apply the same concept of going back to basics to what is presented to you with the technology. What I mean by that is, just because you have an insulin pump that is a bit more autonomous to you physically injecting yourself and that effectively operates as an external pancreas, don't get lulled into just accepting the setup that you're given with that pump.
Yeah.
Look at
Yeah.
the basics. You still need to remember that to prevent burnout, you have to still be cognizant of the fact that I need to be bolusing myself. And again, I believe to prevent burnout with that technology, remember that it's stick to basics, do your bolus wizard, think logically with that, try and continue carb counting like as much as possible, try and apply your mind to that, and don't worry too much about why the basal's correcting like this, why it's doing that. Just do the bolus thing. Again, stick to the basics with the technology. When you
Yeah.
build confidence in doing that, then you can start using all the nuance. That's perfectly fine. But again, using all the nuance and being lulled into comfortability is what sometimes will trigger burnout, because you can't understand, or you'll look at other people that are still maintaining a better time and range than you, for example. It's not a substitute for basics. And
I love
that's why,
that. It's not a substitute for basics.
yeah,
And I
it's
think
just
that especially is what I see when parents come to me and they fixate on the why. Why is it going up? Why is it going down? And it's like, woohoo, back up. This is an autoimmune illness. It is not our job to always figure out the why. We have no idea what our liver is producing right now. We have no idea what our small intestine is doing right now. Why should we know exactly every single thing that our pancreas is trying to do? It is an impossible job. And another point I want to highlight for our viewers too is that it's supposed to be impossible. Like, and if we view it as a fight, we're not going to win. If we view it as a opportunity and an effort, we're going to pat ourselves on the back more often. And I hope that that type of message and the go back to basics method, if you are starting to spiral into this mode of burnout, can really dial you in, because exactly, just give the insulin. Don't worry about the minute carb counting and measuring every single goldfish that your child eats. Give the insulin if that's all you can do, and we'll figure it out. I listened to one podcast recently with a parent and an endocrinologist, and the endocrinologist was just saying, I just want you to thrive. And right now, if thriving means not counting carbohydrates and just getting the insulin in the body, that is more important than any number, percentage, and range, or any A1C reduction. I want you to give the insulin, and I want you to think about safety. Like, this is about managing medication and keeping you safe. Let's focus on the big picture priorities before we nail down the advancements. And so I really, truly believe that. And the technology is not for everyone. We still have the option to use injections, and many people prefer it. I think when we talk about diabetes too, from an identity perspective, we assume that this technology is for everyone. And there is no one size fits all diabetes when it comes to connecting the person, what their personality type is. Are you a data guy? Are you a data nerd that likes data all the time and can manage the input? Or are you a mom that is managing 4 other kids in the household and you need the ease of something like the iLet or the Omnipod that is just kind of plug and play? You really have to think about, well, how is diabetes going to be adapted into my already established strengths in my home? And I don't necessarily know if we have those conversations often and enough early on in our diabetes management today to really allow these decisions to be fluid and prioritized based on the family unit and the dynamics and what is going to work with each individual family, because it really is a huge lifestyle change, and it can be an amazing tool, but it can also lead to burnout.
yeah. Yeah, I
Final
mean,
words, James.
yeah, I
What is
think
your
so
word?
my final words on this topic are, I mean, obviously, I was an avid tennis player when I was younger. I happened to tear my
Yeah.
ACL, so I stopped playing competitively. All of that.
Bummer.
My like one of my somebody that I really really respect heavily is Alexander Zverev. He
Okay.
also he's in the top 10 in the world. He's a type 1 diabetic. And when in his younger years, he was using, again, this is going to go to a burnout because he actually touches on it, and I'll have to find the interview. But he touches on how when he was younger, because of all the data that he was getting all the time from the technology, he actually stepped away because he wanted to take tennis seriously. But he actually found that trying to analyze that too much was actually detracting from him just being an athlete and living. And he said he started to look at himself as a type 1 diabetic, and that's, for me, something that I just don't do either. I look at
Yeah.
myself as James, I look at myself as a human being, and it's just something it's part of my day. But he moved back to rudimentary management, and he said that for him flipped a switch in his brain, and he looked at life completely differently again. And
Yeah.
all I really want to say is type 1 diabetes is not a life sentence. It's not something that you have to actively look at as a negative. If anything, I think I've developed a lot of life skills, soft skills, hard skills. I've learned a lot. And if anything, doing the buy on your bloods too is also a great thing to see. Like, I love being able to know what's going on with myself. Doing sometimes full hormone panels just because I want to know. I would love to know my baselines. But the long story short is, stick to basics. Don't overanalyze yourself. Your body is a weird and crazy thing. It's not something that you'll understand 100% of the time. And it's something that medical specialists and psychologists and psychiatrists try their entire lives to physically understand. And that's a reason why they have the job. Bodies do crazy things. This job wouldn't exist if the body wasn't a insanely complex thing. You don't have to understand everything. All you need to understand is that you need insulin to manage your blood sugar levels.
Yeah.
That is where you should start, always. Don't try and worry about how will I manage more time and range. Do not do that. Know that all you need to do is bolus for carbohydrates. That is the basic. And if you can do that as consistently as possible, you'll lead a much happier life as a type 1 diabetic. When you hit burnout, or when you learn to recognize that you have management burnout, for example, which is just not bolusing correctly, just not really caring about when you change your port, for example, because that can also be a factor.
A huge factor.
Go back to the basics. If you feel like the technology that you're using is really starting to stress you out or take up too much of your time, that you feel like you want it for yourself personally and you don't want it to be such a big thing in your life, then speak to your specialist and they'll probably recommend that you go back to rudimentary treatment.
Yeah.
Bolus
Take
for
a
the
break.
day and eat accordingly.
It's okay to take a break.
Perfectly fine.
It's okay to
It's
take a break.
something that everybody will experience. I'm a big believer in not looking at diabetes as a life sentence or as an identity. And the sooner you do that and you learn to do that and you talk about it and you ask questions, the better. Can't really stress it enough. It's something that luckily, I think innately, maybe thank God to my parents, but it's something that I just learned innately almost, or it just came to me at a very young age. But it's not to say that you need to know everything all the time, and there are people around. There's an Anna Sabino, there's integrated diabetes,
There's a James, there's
yeah,
IDS, there's a Paula,
there's people that are diabetic. You can just ask questions, and quite frankly, don't try and compete with everybody else. It's not.
That was going to be one, as we sort of summarize, top 3 points here. One, lean in and really try to stop and accept, okay, it's new, it's hard, or maybe this is a new feeling and it might be hard, and that is okay. And then 2, back to basics. I love the back to basics piece. I've actually considered doing a sort of back to basics or diabetes 101 for adults with type 1, because I think as adults and young adults who are emerging into this adulthood, my parents were the ones who were educated, and likely yours too. I was 6. You were young also. I wasn't necessarily educated on diabetes management. I had to learn through experience, right? Be like, oh, what's DKA? I had to Google that. My parents probably should have, but didn't sit me down and be like, this is what DKA is. They're still learning too. And I think it's so important to know the basics as you're moving towards living on your own. And I think a lot of times that can be a big challenge. And just knowing your own triggers when it comes to what you feel like is burnout, whether it's not bolusing or just letting the pump drain down or not really wanting to bolus accurately. What your version of burnout is might be different than others. And that's the last thing, is that really, really focus on you. It's so hard to compare as a mom, as a human, as whatever we are. But, your diabetes is yours and only yours. Like, you are the only one within your body. Everyone's going to take a different amount of insulin for a slice of pizza and figure out their own strategy. This is like the number one time where it's okay to focus on you, whatever that looks like. Peer support, leaning inward, leaning into the people who are your strengths. And I know this is 4, but last but not least, just like celebrate those little strengths, because I think it is so easy to flip a switch and get into that mindset of burnout. Oh, I should have done this. Oh, I could have bolused for that. Oh, maybe I should go for a walk. What went well today? Like, even just like one meal or one section of the day was flat overnight. Pick apart the strengths of your day, because those will help jumpstart and fuel your engine to have more moments like that.
Thanks for tuning in to Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast is brought to you by Integrated Diabetes Services, where experience meets expertise, passion meets compassion, and diabetes care is personal because we live it too. Our team of clinicians, all living with type 1 diabetes, understands the challenges firsthand. We're here to help no matter where you are in the world. From glucose management to self-care strategies, the latest tech, sports and exercise, weight loss, type 1 pregnancy, and emotional well-being, we've got you covered. We offer consultations in English and Spanish via phone, video chat, email, and text. Want to learn more? Visit integrateddiabetes.com or email info@integrateddiabetes.com to schedule a consultation. On behalf of Think Like a Pancreas, the podcast, I'm Gary Shiner, wishing you a fantastic week ahead. And don't forget to think like a pancreas.